What is up, guys? It is Dave and Duncan from Metal Epidemic, back with another album review. And for this review, Duncan and I have been checking out the new album from Chicago-based metal quartet Without Waves. The band's new album, Comedian, will be released on March 18th via Prosthetic Records. So, this is album number 3 from Without Waves. Been on the go since around 2010. The new album was self-produced alongside Roland Weary, who also mixed the record before it was mastered by Brad Boatwright from Audio Siege.
Never heard of this Brad guy. Who is he?
Right, well, it rings a bell. Brad, you're the man. Album number 3, the band states that there is a thread of anxiety that runs through each of the album's tracks that may not come as a surprise given the lyrical content. Wrapped up within the themes of the album are a myriad of emotional responses to both personal and socio-political experiences, from the toxic nature of living in the information age to learning to stare down your fears and doing what scares you. Despite the at times difficult topics covered on the album, the band acknowledge that there's often humour to be found in human tragedy. Comedy can soften hard truths, which in turn makes them easier to reckon with and process, hence the album title. Comedian is essentially an analogy for using art to disarm what troubles you. Art has the capability of making wrong feel right. So there we go. I had heard the band's previous album, Lunar, from 2017, which I enjoyed for the most part.
Had you heard it back then?
Yeah. So
all right.
When it came out, yeah. Hadn't really thought much about these guys since that, to be honest. But when the album came in, I thought, oh, right, Without Waves, right, I've not heard that name in a while. And I kind of, in my head, I kind of had an idea of how I thought this was going to sound. But I should have known better with a band like Without Waves. These guys don't really do predictable, it's safe to say. And Comedian is quite the mammoth to get your head around this. I've listened to this more than any of the other albums that I've listened like we listened to this week for review. And I mean, we're talking like probably 7-8 times I've listened to this album, and I still don't feel like I've fully soaked everything in from this album. I don't know how you feel, if you feel the same, but like the first couple of listens, I was like, this is going to take a little bit more time. And I didn't have that issue with the previous album. I kind of took it fairly quickly. This one, I was like, I'm going to need like multiple listens for it just to kind of get my head around this. Style wise, this is varied, to say the least.
Varied doesn't do it justice.
No, it doesn't really. No, it's largely pretty technical and progressive. But that's only kind of like one part of the band's sound.
They're on the right record label. Like they're a Prosthetic Records band. So if anyone is like au fait with their oeuvre of bands, it fits very comfortably in there. They're techie, they're extreme, but there's more going on under the hood. For sure, yeah. The kind of technical side, and there's probably a lot of bands you could kind of pick out, but for me, I was picking out like bits of like Car Bomb, a little bit of Gojira. There's a little bit kind of timing wise, the kind of Dillinger-esque. Destrage was another one that kept coming to mind as well. Destrage, from Italy.
That was from years ago, but and then you've got like this other side of the band, which is like more melodic and alternative and a bit experimental, which could be likened to like maybe even like Devin Townsend or like Porcupine.
Four-Stroke Baron was what came to my head.
Four-Stroke Baron, yes,
the most recent Four-Stroke Baron. There are whole sections in this where I was like, especially when you get hit with like that, like the kind of swaths of like kind of almost kind of quad harmony. And I was like, oh, holy fuck. And it blindsides you. You're just not expecting it.
Yeah.
Because the moment that you've heard before sounds like, I don't know, someone falling down a flight of stairs with a drum kit. It's like that kind of techie, like you're running and then, you're like, what the fuck is going on? So,
but like listing those bands is merely just a reference point. Like it's by no means this is what these guys sound like, because Without Waves definitely have their own thing going on. And although this album is quite the head fuck at times, I'm going to say it right now, this album is fucking incredible.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I love this. Like this is a band that are pushing the boundaries, and I've like fully endorsed that. Being so forward thinking and like experimental musically can be a tricky balance to find, because if you push it too far, it can become just a mess of ideas, a bag of riffs, some may say, with no real kind of consistency to it. But at 3 albums in, I think these guys have a better grasp than most when it comes to making an album that will flow and be cohesive, but will still kind of challenge the listener at the same time, without feeling like overwhelming.
Yeah.
And I think they've absolutely nailed it on Comedian.
It's like the first time you listen to Ironworks by Dillinger, and you're like, everything, like they've managed to capture like all that calculated infinity shit that was just like so out there, but somehow managed to do like all this clean stuff and conventional stuff and make it sound like it's supposed to be on the same album. Yeah, that's kind of how I felt when I listened to this.
I was similar. Yeah, similar. I was thinking more along the lines of like when I first heard Sikth, for example. Yeah. Yes. I was just like, fucking hell, this is nuts, man. But like there's something really fucking cool about it at the same time. They have that like a very kind of like unpredictable nature about them, which, it can be quite peculiar at times in a good way, like very much like Sikth were, but then there are moments where they kind of rein in that wild side and deliver something far more balanced and refined. Yeah. And I think it was on those moments that I really kind of got like a glimpse behind the curtain with this band. Whether it's something really like vocally emotional, like on Slight and Shadows or Day 15, or even when they strip it back musically on like Worlds Apart. I felt like those tracks hit just as hard as the ones that were brimming with these like mad time signatures and technical guitar parts. But when they kind of blend the two sides of the band, I think that's for me when the kind of magic happens. Tracks like Set and Setting, where they just throw everything at you, like you're getting techie guitars and blast beats and off-kilter rhythms and unhinged vocals, but then they just unload like a huge chorus with this kind of deluge of melody and texture. It has so much impact. Same with Do What Scares You, that had this kind of like car bomb type eccentricity to it, but they never overdo it. They pull it in just before it becomes like too much or too exhausting. The other thing that I found really strange about this one was the way they've ordered the album.
Yes.
And this, I picked up after a few listens to this, I was like, this is quite an odd way to kind of order the album. Like the second half of the album, they seem to start to bring in more ambience and more melody and clean guitars and texture. Now, most bands would probably have mixed those tracks up a little more, like spread them out. But Without Waves haven't really done that. There are still heavy parts like mixed in throughout those lighter tracks, but the focus feels more on the melody and the kind of vocal hooks. And I was like, that like on paper that shouldn't work. Like the album should sound like lopsided. Yeah. But when I was listening, I was like, this, but it totally works. Listening to it, it was just like, I don't know how this is working, but it does.
I think it's because it's so extreme at the front.
Yeah, maybe.
You know what I mean? I think that the pick the exact point to switch it, to transition it away from that. Yeah. That you like the first like 4 or 5 songs on this album will exhaust you in the best possible way, but that is mentally taxing to listen to. So when those melodies come in, it's something to hold on to. Yeah. And then that's when the album really opens up. I mean, really start doing a lot of stuff, which isn't maybe musically dexterous, but at the same point, it just allows you to kind of fall into it. And I think that is a very, very, very clever musical choice. Because like you see, every fibre in your being when you come to craft an album is that if you put something more melodic, if you're a heavy band, if you've got any track that feels remotely like it's quiet, the track that needs to come after needs to punch you in the face. Yeah. And they don't do that. They don't succumb to that. And I think that's confidence in songwriting, confidence in structure as well. Yeah, for sure. But like when those melodies start to really kick in, it's then that you kind of realise like how good a vocalist Anthony really is. Insane, man. Like, fucking insane. His melodies, the harmonies are just so good. He has some set of pipes, like his range is incredible, his tone is really
kind of warm and engaging. It's quite alternative sounding at times, but his choice of melody is absolutely spot on. Every time I listen to this, I feel like it's like one of those albums that you'll pick up something or pick out something that you never heard the time before. Like I think it was like my maybe second or third listen, and I was like on track 3, which is Algorithm, I think it's called. And I was like, this is like almost like, it reminded me of like a more modern psychcore, like psychcore from like the kind of 90s. Like it's very like quirky lyrically. It's got that kind of very kind of choppy kind of groove to it. But it sounds like more like up to date and fresh, a bit more progressive sounding as well. But it's little things like that you're listening to, you're like, I never even noticed that the last like 3 times I've listened to this album. So it's very rewarding in that you'll get kind of more out of it the more you listen to it. It's the riffs are killer. It's the technicality is unbelievable. The guitar work and the drumming, but it's got depth and it's got emotion as well. This is a stunner, by the way. This is an absolutely stunning album for me. I hugely enjoyed this album. What about yourself? What did you think?
Yeah, this is a bit as good as it gets. The first listen, because I knew nothing about them at all, so this was a first time listen to this band who I knew nothing about. Wasn't aware they had stuff out before. Don't read the press blurb that gets sent out again, and like Good Grief kicks in, and it kind of reminded me of it's one of the Every Time I Die albums, which has that motif, I want to be dead with my friends. And it's him screaming and the fucking drums are going like, just, it's all distorted and it's really unpleasant. But that track does that for a while and then finds like a big swagger and Every Time I Die groove. And Good Grief never gives you that. It just keeps fucking hitting you to the point where it, like, you're almost going, right, well, it instantly puts you on the back foot. You just don't know what you're doing. And then the fucking track starts to open up, and then it's almost as if the band from that point are like they've already got you second guessing kind of what to expect, and then they use that to their advantage by really just like, every time you think you've kind of got a handle on where a track's going, they very quickly pull it away. But they don't pull it away in a way where it feels like so disjointed that you like, if music has a narrative, you feel like you've been cheated, you know what I mean? Or like that this plot twist doesn't work. It never felt like that. I think their greatest gift actually is their composition. I think their composition is at times is like a head and shoulders over a lot of bands that are writing so-called technical music. I think that like technical music, without doing shots fired, I think bands that think they're doing technical music just think if their guitars are playing a lot of notes, they're a technical band. That's not how that works. A technicality, you know, our technical ability to play music is weaving time signatures and changes and like musical elements in ways which are not easy to transition into, but you make it easy through the listen. And that's what Comedian has all the way through it. It like kind of floored me on the first listen, to the point where I was kind of sitting just stunned when it finished the last track, going, you know, just a big sigh, kind of puff of air out. And then I went back. I listened to this 4 times. It's an hour long, so you know you have to strap yourself in for this one. And every listen, like you were saying, you pick out something else, but it's not that I just picked out something else. I actually started to find that I had a greater appreciation for what they've done. So on tracks like Animal Kingdom, for example, which is fairly fucking full on, when I was listening to that the first time, I was just like, it's just so fucking, it's so like repulsive, you know, it's just like so just gnarly sounding. And then on the second listen, I was like, well, what is it that makes it gnarly sounding? So like then try and pick apart the musical elements and build it together. And then I would find it was maybe just one particular chord that are playing. I'd be like, that is that chord right there. It's that accent on that chord that makes that sound sinister. And then the next time I would listen to it, I was like, well, no, actually, it's the way they change the time. on that. That's what's disjointed about it, and it constantly has me second guessing on it. And if that was just that, it would be worth its weight in gold musically. But like you say, they have this whole other side which really shines on the back half of the album, that I think is fucking incredible. The guy's voice is not only when he's doing the angry shit, when he's doing the vicious, snarly, angry shit, it's you know, it's grating. It goes right through you. It's like being pelted with ice, like fine chips of ice in the face. It just really is quite. You just wince when you listen to it. But the guy has a voice which, like you say, if he wanted to go and sell millions of albums, he could easily sell millions of albums. It's so fucking smooth, and so the range, he can hit those high notes very, very easy, but he's very playful with his melodies. He doesn't always sing exactly the way you think he is, and actually most of the times the creation that comes out at the end is more rewarding. Like, as a vocalist in the past, I tend to find that when I know what the chord is, or when I know where the chorus is going, I can roughly pick out what the next note the singer's going to sing or how it's going to finish. You get a feel for how singers sing. I never felt that way with him. His choice of notes are actually surprisingly better than I think he will even get credit for. I think and because there's so much stuff that's going on in the band, I think it's very easy to overlook how commercial they could be if they wanted to, like scarily. And that really set in for me on, like, Day 15 for me is this really kind of tragically somber, melancholic track, which I felt at first, on the first listen, well, you better pick this up on the next track, and they don't do it. Worlds Apart kind of keeps in that register and then builds back on top of it. And it's just a different level of, like I say, it's composition, command, and understanding of how to write music. It's a fucking incredible album. If I was them, I would be immensely proud of this album, because, like, we've flung about 20 bands against the wall here, and they still don't actually sound like any of those bands. They have this just really interesting volatility that I just find moreish. Like, I just wanted to go back and listen to it more. I wanted to understand the writing process more, and I think they would be a hugely fascinating band to see live, because see if they were chaotic on stage, totally go with the sound. See if they were one of those bands that didn't move at all, I think this would still be a fucking supremely interesting band to see live. Just a, like, I don't know. It kind of, it's a special one. I think this is, I genuinely, this is one of these ones we will be very, very much like when we heard the Black Crown Initiate, and then after that you were like, right, well, we're going to be comparing a lot of albums to this year. I think I'm going to be comparing a lot of albums to Comedian this year. Things that are on a kind of techier level, I'm going to be saying, well, do they do it as good as this? But then I also think when I hear bands that mix a more commercial kind of melancholic melody sort of sound with a more kind of technical level as well, I'm going to be saying, well, do they do it as good as Without Waves? And bands will have to be on an exceptionally high level to get near what they've done on this album. It's fucking awesome.
100%.
Whew.
Ratings for Comedian by Without Waves. I didn't even have to think about this for longer than 2 seconds, to be honest. This is, as you've said, this is as good as it gets. Like, I can't find fault in this at all. It's a 5 out of 5 for me. It has just unbelievable technical chops right throughout musically. It has stunning vocals, production's great as well. And I kind of love the way they've structured this album as well, which, you know, in my head I'm thinking, how does that work? But it so does. It's just fantastic. Yeah, it's a long listen, and, you know, there's a lot going on, but I think if you give this album your time, it's very rewarding indeed, and I think I'm going to be going back to this a lot this year. Just absolutely fantastic. What about yourself?
The first time I ever heard Miss Machine by Dillinger Escape Plan, I knew there was something special kind of going on. And then they followed up with Ironworks, which was a more commercial album, but had all the venom and everything that the previous album had, but it was refined. and I was excited about that because it was the first time I was like that. I get extreme music can be like commercially appealing, and that, you know, this is where it goes. And there are very few bands that have made me feel that way since listening to Comedian. So I'm going to say 5 is on my hand. Yes, it is. It's a 5-star album.
Yeah,
if this isn't a 5-star album, then what the fuck is? You know what I mean?
True.
Different level. Some bands just operate at a completely different level to other bands, and Without Waves are one of those bands, apparently.
And it's not even like it's all just on the surface stuff. Like, this has got depth and it's got emotion to it as well.
You can pick out stuff, and then like it's got huge amounts of heart. Like even listening to you read that blurb about finding the weirdly darkly comedic moments in tragedy. Yeah. There are tragic, but you can feel it in the vocals. You can hear it in the lyrics. It's there, but it's such a playful album. It's
it's one of those ones we could probably talk about this for another 20 minutes, to be honest.
Dude, we could just pick a track and speak about 20 minutes just on what it is exactly about this track that makes it fucking incredible, and then go, well, you know, we could do a 10-part series. We may still do a 10-part series on Comedian before this is out, but this is I hope Prosthetic's putting this out. They're not the biggest label in the world, but they've got a great following. I genuinely hope this album, this band get a ton of traction because this deserves to be heard.
100%, Without Waves, Comedian drops on March 18th on Prosthetic Records. As usual, links below to the band's Facebook, pre-orders and stuff. Check this one out. Give it your time. It's a fantastic album. Let us know what you think. Once you've heard some of the singles, once you've heard the album, drop some comments in below. Happy to hear your thoughts and opinions on it. That is the review. Hope you enjoyed it. Hit that subscribe button below if you did, and we will see you on the next review.
Bye, everyone.